You are watching Reiwa Gaming Matt, and now it's time for a review of Ghost of Tsushima. In the late 13th century, a Mongolian army led by Kublai Khan invaded Japan through the island of Tsushima. Their actions caused great damage and concern among the Japanese country and its people itself. In fact, they were very close to being successful to crushing the Japanese samurai and their entire armies. However, thanks to a few tsunami that wiped out the entire Mongolian fleet in the sea, Japan was successful in repelling the Mongolian invaders. It's an interesting point in Japanese history, and many people outside of Japan and Asia may not know about this time period. But thanks to Sucker Punch and Sony, we now have a new game that gives us a little light into that interesting history, with Sony's so-called Sayonara to the PlayStation 4 Ghost of Tsushima. This is a fantastic open world game in which you take part in the repelling of the Mongolian invasions that took place in the late 13th century in Tsushima, Japan. Now in this game, you play as Jin Sakai, a samurai who's the last of his family, who is part of these repelling of the Mongolian forces. As the game begins, you join with a very respected member of the island, the leader of the island, Lord Shimura, who is someone who took Jin Sakai as their kind of adopted son, although not officially, early in his life due to the deaths of Jin Sakai's parents. And they begin a attack on the Mongolian army to try to stop them from coming onto Tsushima Island. However, this army, led by Kuta Khan, which is a made-up character, the real invasions were done by Kublai Khan, completely decimate and destroy the samurai in this battle. And the ways that they do this shock and just absolutely devastate the samurai army as they see war tactics that they just can't believe are even possible. The samurai are held by a honor code, Bushido, and when they see the ideals that the Mongolian army does, things like attacks that are very unhonorable and very critical and very difficult to handle, the Japanese armies are both repulsed and angry by this, but they also have no way to really fight against it. Japanese samurai believe in the honor code and they must fight as honor. They can't go and stab someone in the back. It's all about facing your enemy with full honor. But because of that, they get totally decimated in this battle. Now somehow, with all this death and destruction, Jin Sakai survives. And as he survives, we find out that Lord Shimura has been taken captive by Koten Khan. Jin Sakai goes to try to save Lord Shimura at the beginning of the game, but unfortunately, we find that he unfortunately is nowhere near the ability to be able to take on the Khan in this battle. And he ends up being thrown off a bridge to what appears to be his apparent death. Now, thankfully for us, the gamers, he doesn't die. He ends up landing in the ocean and he is saved by one of his eventual friends in the game. And he begins a quest to try to liberate Tsushima, to save Lord Shimura, and to save Japan from invasions from the Mongolian fleet. This is the catalyst in the beginning of an incredible journey that you take in this open world of Tsushima, Japan. Now, the first thing I want to talk about this game is that it is one of the most gorgeous looking games that I've ever seen on the PlayStation. And this is something coming from a person who has a vanilla launch PlayStation 4, not even a Pro, a launch PlayStation 4. The graphics in this game are some of the best graphics I've ever seen on this system from an aesthetic point of view. Certainly there are some games with more technical, detailed graphics. Obviously, the recent Last of Us 2 had some amazing graphical fidelity in it, but this game has amazing aesthetics to it. The island of Tsushima is brought to life with incredible color, incredible foliage, incredible scenes that just look beautiful. This game comes with an incredibly awesome photo mode, which is probably being used more than any other photo mode in a game I've ever heard of. People really love this photo mode because everything you can take in this game, every picture you can take, looks absolutely gorgeous. And that's because the world of Tsushima is brought to life in a beautiful beautiful way. The mountains are majestic. The land is covered in beautiful flowers. Leaves are flying everywhere. There's birds that are flying overhead. Bamboo stick poles in areas of forest. Beautiful beaches. Everything looks absolutely fantastic, and it just really comes alive on the screen. And that open world is one of the most important things that's about an open world game. You have to have a world that you want to explore, that you want to be a part of. And Tsushima Japan, as it's presented in this game, is one of the best open worlds that I've ever experienced in a game in my life. It's just simply really, really, really well done. It's beautiful. It's awesome. It's fantastic. And it was a world that when I played this game, I wanted to explore. I wanted to explore every nook and cranny of this world, to climb the mountains of the game, to go on the beaches, to go through the forest. It was so beautiful to really, look through. Now, the next thing that's very important is, what's the gameplay like? Well, the gameplay in this game is your typical open world game. Your goal is to liberate Tsushima. So you're going to be going all over the island, fulfilling quests, fulfilling missions, saving people from Mongolian invaders who are taking them prisoner. You're going to be liberating camps, liberating townships and farmsteads from Mongolian forces who have taken over, and you're going to be doing a lot of looking for smaller items, items that might help you in how you look, also in terms of like how you actually attack. There's a lot of things in this game that you can do. Some of the coolest things about this open world is some of the little details they added. They had some really cool mini games. For instance, there was this one option. Basically, if you go around the island, you can find these spots where you can conduct haikus. And these haikus, it's not the most deep thing. It's just a kind of a nice little moment where you take a break, look at the beautiful scenery in the game, and compose a haiku that's like presented to you in game from multiple choice answers. And by going to these places, you get more items to make your character look different. There's a lot of items to make the character customization really awesome. There's also hot springs you can go to, which will increase your life. There are these bamboo stick poles you have to break that will increase your resolve. Resolve is part of the combat. And all these things really help to make the exploration really fantastic. One thing that I really liked about this game was that there are no towers you have to climb in order to open up the world to see, because of course the world is got a fog of war, just like most open world games. But there is something similar to it, and that was what was called the shrine quest. There's 16 shrine quests where you have to basically climb small hills or big mountains to get to the top of shrines. And at these shrines, again, you can get more items for your character. And because they're not necessary to actually beat the game, it's just there for fun. They were really fun to try to climb and get through. I had a great time with it. Those were some of the most fun parts of the exploration. So as an island, it is one of the best open worlds I've seen in a game, and there's a lot of great open world games out there, but this one really stood out. But as also with the gameplay comes the combat, and that's where this game shines so well. This is a samurai game, and thus when you have a samurai game, you have to have really good combat to mimic and replicate that sword fighting experience of having a great sword fight battle, and with the katanas, the long samurai swords. And Sucker Punch has done a great job in making a combat game system that works really, really well. You basically have your regular attack, and you have your super attack, so to speak, your power attack, and you go into sword battles with those two. Now, you also have many different stances that you can do, just like in real life in sword fighting, in samurai sword fighting. You can have like a certain stance for fighting against other swordsmen, a certain stance fighting with someone with shields, a certain stance with fighting brute forces. And you can change those on the fly using the controls of the game. Use the R2 button, hold that down, and you can change your stance at any time. And then you can let go and go back into your fighting. It's a great way of doing it. In fact, the combat is so good that it always felt really fresh. It felt really fluid, and it was incredibly enjoyable. Even as I got to like 50, 60 hours into the game, I didn't tire of the combat. I really loved things like the standoffs, where you actually have to stand off against many samurai or many Mongols, and sometimes samurai too. Actually, there's some Ronin you have to fight as well, and it's basically just two men in a quiet stance, waiting for the first to strike. And it's a duel, and if you do it at the right moment, like right timing, you can just slice open your opponent and kill them instantly. And eventually, you can like chain it into many different people. There's also many duels in the game where you have like one-on-one duel battles, which are very, very exciting. These are the so-called boss battles of the game, and they really, really shine in this game. Um, the combat in this game is just a lot of fun. The parrying is really good. The blocking is very good. The entire feel of the game has a feel of something like an old game like Bushido Blade. It feels like you're holding a katana and you're actually fighting as a samurai. So the combat is absolutely fantastic. I will say that the controls are pretty good. Some people have complained that there's no lock on. I think that not having lock on was good. I think having lock on would have been bad. I just think it really works well in this game not to have a lock on. And also, the other issue I had was, I would say that I had was that when you do change your stances with the R2 button, I tend to want to try to attack immediately. So I push triangle to do my power attack, but I would not have let go of the R2 button enough. So unfortunately, it would switch stances while instead of attacking. So I'd have to go back and do that again. But it wasn't such a big deal in the end. So the combat and the gameplay are really, really good. What about the characters and the story? Well, the main character, Jin Sakai, many people have complained about him as being kind of a boring character, unlikable, or just really not really unlikable, more of like not interesting. I personally actually thought that he was a very interesting character as the story kept going on. He starts out as a simple samurai that's full of honor, and his goal is to save his Lord Shimura, who took him in when his parents died. And his goal, of course, to liberate Tsushima, to save the people of his island, because this island is important to him as a samurai. It's important to him because he just cares about the people. But he's put into a very difficult position because the Mongolian army that fights on Tsushima uses tactics that simply the Japanese samurai have never seen before. And they're tactics that they view as unhonorable, and the tactics that just they cannot fight against using their original styles. So Jin Sakai has to go in and he has to start taking in new combat ideas. These are the so-called ghost stances, the ghost fighting abilities in the game, where basically you take on the role of a kind of like a ninja or a silent assassin, and you'll do things like using silent weapons like kunai and things like that, going and attacking from behind, using poisons, all kinds of things like that. And this, of course, brings to an interesting conflict in the game, and that is Jin Sakai's important necessity for living up to the code of honor for the Japanese samurai versus trying to defeat this army the only way he can by bringing in these difficult ideals into the battle, because otherwise it wouldn't work. And that will eventually come very important into the story later on. This whole conflict between honor and necessity, and also is this necessity going to break his honor with his fellow samurai, with his Lord Shimura, that important member to him as his like adopted family, and how this plays out in the game is a very interesting story and a very important one, because it does go into a lot of ideals about Japanese society in general, particularly the idea of the person who sticks out has to be hammered down. And Jin Sakai is a person who sticks out. He sticks out above this group of people that are so connected on the idea of honor. And his conflict is the conflict that you have to deal with. And it's a very interesting story, and it really wraps up very well. I think the ending of the story is fantastic, and I really, really love it. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up, is that this is the second game in the last couple weeks in which we've had from Sony that's had to deal with the idea of revenge or avenge. And in fact, that's one thing that I think that's really interesting. Last of Us 2 was all about simply revenge and how bad revenge is and how terrible revenge is. But in this game, there's a lot of the similar ideals in this game. There's a lot of people that you are helping that have been betrayed by people that they know, that have had family members that have been completely lost by the Mongolian forces, and even by Japanese people that have turned side and betrayed their own and killed people within their families. And you see this, a lot of this wanting to, people that you will help in side missions that want to get these people, find these people, and avenge their family's loss against them. And so you hear that a lot: avenge and not revenge. Excuse me. And I think that's really something that does very well. It does talk about revenge in a better way than I think Last of Us 2 did. It talks about it as being an avenging ideal. And it showcases, just like the Last of Us 2, that, you know, revenge isn't always the best thing in the world, and sometimes you have to take a different stance, a different route. And so you'll see that you'll see some stories will end with revenge fulfilled. You'll see some stories end with redemption created, and I think that was really, really, really well done. I really like that about the game. In the end, the story just was a lot of fun, and it was also a very touching story as we got to the end. And you cared about the characters, especially the side characters. There's a lot of great side characters, particularly Yuna, the main side character who saves you at the beginning of the game. She becomes such an important part of the title, and her journey with you on the island, and her basically teaching you the beginnings of the combat abilities that which Jin Sakai takes to become the so-called Ghost of Tsushima, which leads him down a path that's darker than the samurai honorable code, is very, very, very unique and interesting. The music and sound are fantastic. It's got that classical Japanese sound to it, you know, classical Japanese beats of drums and beautiful Japanese musical instruments. And it sounds like one of those old samurai films that you saw in the past. And I want to say something else about that, you know, because a lot of people have said, like, this game is very Kurosawa-like. And this game actually has a Kurosawa mode, interesting enough. It's a mode where you can play the game in black and white, which sounds really cool. And, you know, it does look cool, but this is a game that you really should experience in color, because the color is so brilliant and wonderful. And there's a little bit of Kurosawa there, but Kurosawa, I think, is a little more deeper than a lot of people would expect than this story is. And, you know, there's a lot of great other samurai directors and great directors of works of samurai and, you know, time period pieces in the past that kind of get, like, missed out on this story, or on stories like this that you don't hear about. So, well, I'm glad that it's getting comparisons to Kurosawa, at least in terms of style. I don't know if this would be a Kurosawa-like film if it was made to a film, but it is definitely reminiscent of those great classical Japanese samurai films from many people of the time period, or not that time period, that work in those time periods and such. So yeah, I think the story is very good. It's very well done. It's paced very well. It's great. And lastly, like, just overall feeling, this game has been an absolute treat. It's a game that lasts about 20 to 30 hours on single play of the main story. But if you really want to do everything, if you want to do everything that you can, especially to get the platinum, which is an easy platinum, it'll probably take you 40 to 50 hours. And you don't even have to get every item in the game. You can do that if you want, but you don't need to do that to get the platinum. To get every item in the game takes about 60 hours. It's a little harder, and you'll need probably some guides to do it, unless you're like a really good at finding things in the game. And some of those things are really, really hidden well. But because this game really rewards you for exploration and for looking for things and for going on trips throughout the island to helping people, it becomes, you know, an easy thing to do, to find these items eventually. And you may not find them all, but you'll find most of them through your playthrough. So it becomes a very interesting title. I do want to address one small little controversy that has come out about this game, and it's been a very, very small group of people that have been kind of vocal about arguing that this game was made by Sucker Punch, a Western studio, and not a Japanese studio, and not an Asian studio. And that many people say, well, this is a game about Japan. It should be made by people from Japan. It should be made by Asians. It should be made by people, that have that background. And I understand the feelings of that. As an Asian studies major, as someone who's studied Asian studies in college, the viewpoint of a lot of films about Japan from the West can be glorified in the ideals of Orientalism, where the West glorifies as the East as the majestical and mythical world. But the thing that I have to say about this is that Sucker Punch did a fantastic job in doing this game. They did their research. They did their research on this time period. They went to Tsushima. They talked to people. They created a game that is very respectful of Japan, very respectful of the samurai, very respectful of the culture. And they did a fantastic job with it. Yes, there's a couple of small things that they got wrong about, things like sake barrels, as Brian Ashcraft of Kotaku mentioned. Small things like that, like some hats were a little different. But they did a very good job, and they showcased that yes, a studio from another country or another group of people can make a game that is respectful and caring of the group of people that's involved, and that you don't have to be a part of someone to tell a story that's important. And the honest thing is, it's really weird about this controversy that's brewed on Twitter, is that the reception of this game in Japan has been phenomenal. This game has sold really well. It is the highest selling new IP title and highest selling Western game out of launch on the PlayStation 4 in Japan so far. It beat out Last of Us 2 in sales, which was a kind of a surprise for many people. Although some people might argue not a surprise, because it is a samurai game. And the praise has been glowing. Famitsu gave it a 40 out of 40 review. The president of Sega came out recently this week, had a stream where he gave it great reviews, talking about it a lot, how great it was, and also mentioned, we should have made a game like that. We waited too long and someone else made it. Someone in Japan should have made that game. But he also mentioned that if Japan made it, the main characters wouldn't look the way they do. And that's something I do want to mention that I forgot to mention about the main characters. They don't look like beautiful Japanese actors like you see in things like Neo and other games where they actually get real actors and actresses to play. They look like actual people that would be on that island. They're rough. They're tough. They don't have the best beautiful looks in them, but they look like real people fighting real battles. And I thought that was a great decision, rather than to make everyone look like a perfect sense of beauty or coolness. It just looked fantastic the way it was. So I understand that there are some issues that people have, and that's fine. There's issues that people can have about representation and about having more voices in the game industry. But I think this is a controversy that just kind of got overblown, and thankfully it's disappeared already. Japanese in Japan have spoken already, and many people around the world have spoken as well. This is a great game. It doesn't matter who made this game, because it is very respectful of its culture, and it's respectful of the people in it. So overall, I think Ghost of Tsushima is a absolutely fantastic title. I don't give number reviews. I just don't like that idea. But I will say this is a highly recommended title. This is easily one of my favorite games of this year. And to be honest, I'm glad this was the last big Sony first party release on the PlayStation 4, because it deserves to be. This game is one of the best games that they have released. It's one of the best games Sucker Punch has ever made, absolutely. Probably their best game, I think. I would say it's my favorite game of theirs. It's an open world game that really hits close to my heart. It's really a lot of fun. And if you're a person who likes these samurai games with great combat and likes exploring great places and just loves the beauty of great graphics, this is the game for you. It is so well done. It is so good. And even though I finished the game and got the platinum, I feel sad because I want to play more, because it's really, really, really that good. So this is a huge recommendation. Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best games this year. Will definitely be in my top 10 list at the end of the year. It will definitely be very high up there. In fact, it might be my favorite game so far this year. It and Final Fantasy VII Remake are really high up there. But yeah, Great job, Sucker Punch. Great job, Sony, in making a fantastic game. This is a must-buy if you own a PlayStation 4. So definitely check it out if you can. Highly recommended by me. So, as always, thank you for joining me on this review for Ghost of Tsushima. There's more videos to come, so please keep your eyes peeled for the next video from me, Reiwa Gaming Matt. Until then, see ya. Keep it here for more news and reviews from gaming in Japan, Reiwa Gaming Matt.